The deed was already signed, the house already sold, and $147,000 was already gone before I even knew the house was on the market. My brother Derek looked me in the eye at our mother's kitchen table and said, "You never had any real plans for it anyway, so I made the decision for you." He sold the only place on earth that still smelled like her, forged my name on the paperwork, and told every single person in our family that I agreed to all of it. What he did not know was that I had been recording every phone call between us for 11 months. And by the time he figured that out, there was nothing left for him to say. If this story is hitting you somewhere you didn't expect, stay right here. This one was written for you. I am the kind of person who keeps things running. I always have been. Growing up, there were 4 of us kids and our mom, and Derek was the oldest, so everyone assumed he was in charge. But it was me who remembered which bills were due. It was me who made sure the little ones had lunch money. It was me who sat up with Mom when she got sick the first time, and the second time, and the third. Nobody ever gave me a title for it. I was just the one who showed up. My daily life for most of my adult years looked something like this. I woke up at 5:30 because that was when the quiet was still mine. I made coffee, packed my lunch, and drove 40 minutes to my job at a county tax office where I processed deed transfers and property paperwork all day. I came home, cooked something simple, called Mom if it was a weekday, and was asleep by 10. I did not have a big social life. I did not go on fancy trips. I put money away carefully, and I lived small on purpose because I knew that one day something would matter, and I wanted to be ready. Derek was different. He moved 3 states away in his 20s and came back for holidays with big stories and bigger opinions. He always knew the best way to do everything. He was loud at family dinners in a way that made people laugh, and because he was funny and confident, most people assumed he was also right. Mom loved him the way moms love the child who needs the most pulling back toward home. She worried about him. I was the one she trusted. The first time I noticed something small and wrong about Derek was about 2 years after Mom was diagnosed with the illness that would eventually take her. He came home for a weekend to help, or so he said. What he actually did was sleep until noon, watch television most of the afternoon, and then have a long phone call on the back porch that he walked away from us to take. I asked him that evening if he could drive Mom to her Thursday appointment since I had a work conflict. He said sure. Thursday came, he didn't drive her. He said he forgot. When I brought it up that night, he laughed a little and said, "You were going to handle it anyway." He was not mean about it. He was just completely unbothered. The second moment that stuck with me was at Thanksgiving a year later. Mom had divided up her jewelry among me and my 2 sisters in a small ceremony at the table, the way she wanted to, while she still could. She gave me her silver bracelet and gave Derek a watch that had belonged to our father. He thanked her and put it in his coat pocket. 6 months later, I saw that watch on an auction site. The listing was under a name I didn't recognize, but the engraving on the back of the watch, the one that said RT 1974, was in the photo as clear as anything. I never said anything to Mom. She was not doing well by then, and I was not going to add one more hard thing to her days. The third moment was after the funeral. Mom had been clear in her will. The house went to Derek and me equally, 50% each. She told both of us this while she was still alive. She said she wanted us to decide together what to do with it, whether to sell and split the money or keep it and figure something out. Derek nodded and said, "Of course, Mom, whatever you say." He held her hand. He looked like the son she always hoped he would be. I watched him and I thought maybe this time. People change when they lose someone. Maybe loss would soften something in him. That house meant everything to me personally. Not for the money. The money was real and I needed it, but that was not the main thing. Mom had lived in that house for 31 years. My childhood was in those walls. The cracked ceramic rooster she kept on the kitchen windowsill, the one she bought at a yard sale the summer I was 9, and said made her feel like someone was keeping watch, was still sitting there. I had stood at that windowsill 100 times watching birds in the yard while she cooked behind me. The house was the last place I could go and still feel her near me. I wanted us to take our time with the decision. I wanted to walk through it one more time before anything changed. I told Derek this. He said, "Of course, no rush." That was the last time I believed him. The first sign came about 4 months after the funeral. I called Derek to check in about the house because the property taxes were coming due and we needed to handle them as co-owners. He didn't pick up. I texted. He replied 2 days later saying he'd been busy and would call soon. He didn't call. I called again. He picked up this time but was distracted and the call was short. He said the taxes were fine. He'd taken care of it, don't worry. Something about the way he said, "Don't worry," sat wrong with me. When someone who has given you reasons not to trust them tells you not to worry, your stomach knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. Mine knew something that day. I let it go. I talked myself down with the usual logic. He was probably just busy. He did say he handled the taxes. That was actually helpful. Maybe I was looking for problems that weren't there. Mom always said I had a habit of carrying other people's weight before they even asked me to. Maybe this was me doing that again. The second sign came in month 6. I drove out to the house on a Saturday just to check on it, to see the yard and make sure nothing was overgrown. When I pulled up, I noticed the lockbox on the front door. The kind real estate agent's use. It was not there the last time I visited. I stood on the sidewalk and looked at it for a long time. I told myself there could be a normal reason. Maybe Derek had hired someone to do repairs and given them access. Maybe the executor had arranged something I didn't know about. I did not have Derek's new cell number memorized, so I texted from the driveway. No reply. I went home and I searched the property address on the county's public records site. The site I used every single day at work. The one I knew better than my own phone number. There was nothing unusual showing yet. No new deed, no transfer of title. I breathed for a moment and closed my laptop. See, I told myself, you're inventing things. But I kept the app on my phone running. The one I'd downloaded 8 months earlier after a feeling I couldn't name. It was a free call recording app, completely legal in my state. I had not planned to use it for anything specific. I just knew something in me needed to be careful. I had not told anyone about it, not my sisters, not my best friend from work, nobody. I just kept it there, running quietly, every time Derek called. Third sign was a conversation. Derek finally called back about the lockbox and explained it casually, easily, the way he explained everything. He said he'd had a property manager look at the house to get an estimate for repairs. He said repairs were necessary before we could do anything with it. I asked what kind of repairs. He gave me a list. New roof, updated electrical, some foundation work. I asked how much. He said he wasn't sure yet. I asked why he hadn't told me beforehand. He paused, just a small pause, and said he didn't want to stress me out with the details. I almost said what I was thinking. I almost said, "That's not your call, Derek. This is my house too. Half of every decision belongs to me." But I pulled back. I always pulled back with him. There was a pattern there that I hadn't fully named yet, a habit of swallowing the right words and hoping the problem would resolve on its own. I had been doing it since childhood. You do not stop a habit like that in one phone call. But after we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the grocery store where I had pulled over to take his call. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, and my inner voice was not soft anymore. It was not gentle. It was saying something direct and clear, the kind of thing you can't unhear once it starts speaking at full volume. It was saying, he is doing something. You know he is doing something, and you are running out of time to find out what. I went home that night and I pulled up the county records again. Then I made an account on a national property records database that I had access to through work. I searched the address. I searched Derek's name. I searched my own name with a slight misspelling, one letter off, the kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I found something. And what I found was so much worse than I'd let myself imagine. Before I tell you what I saw on that screen, I need you to lean in close. Because what happened next is the part I have never told out loud, and once you hear it, you are going to understand why it took me almost a year to breathe normally again. The deed had already been transferred. A new deed was on file. My name was on the transfer document as a cosigner. The signature was mine in the legal sense, the sense that a notary had stamped it, the sense that the county had accepted it. But I had never signed that paper. I had never sat across from a notary. I had never agreed to sell. My name had been forged. The house had been sold 4 weeks earlier to a property investment company based out of a city I had never visited. The sale price was $147,000. That number hit me like something physical. I pushed back from my desk. I felt the back of my chair stop me. I just stared at the screen. I just stared. I could not speak. I could not breathe. I sat in my apartment in the dark with my laptop open and the number $147,000 on the screen, and I understood fully, for the first time, what had happened. Derek had planned this. He had found a buyer. He had forged my signature. He had paid someone somewhere to put a notary stamp on a document I had never touched. He had taken the house. He had taken the money. He had taken the last place on earth that felt like my mother. And then he had called me and talked to me about repair estimates like we were just two people having a normal conversation. I thought about all the times I covered for him as kids, all the times I explained away his behavior to Mom, all the times I said, "That's just Derek," when someone else would have said, "That's not okay." I thought about the watch with our father's name on it that he sold without a second thought. I thought about the Thursday appointment he forgot. I thought about the way he said, "Don't worry," like my knowing less was a service he was doing me. And then I thought about that cracked ceramic rooster on the kitchen windowsill. I did not know if it was still in the house. I did not know if the buyers had cleared it out. I did not know if it had been thrown away. The thought of it sitting in a garbage bag somewhere, or worse, sitting on a stranger's windowsill without anyone knowing what it meant, broke something open in me that I cannot fully describe even now. I cried for about an hour. The ugly kind, where you can't catch your breath and the sound you make doesn't sound like yourself. And then I stopped. I sat up. I wiped my face. And something in me went very, very quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means surrender. The other kind. The kind that comes right before you become someone your enemy has not planned for. I want to be clear about something. There was no dramatic moment where I stood up and made a speech to myself in the mirror. There was no music in my head. There was no lightning bolt of anger that made me feel powerful. What happened was much smaller than that and much more permanent. I was sitting at my kitchen table 2 days later. It was early morning. My coffee was in front of me. I had barely slept in 48 hours and I was not thinking about Derek. I was staring at the windowsill above my kitchen sink, the one that had nothing on it, just white paint and a water stain from a leaky pipe I'd been meaning to have fixed. And I thought, suddenly, about the rooster. Not about the house, not about the money, not about Derek. Just about that small cracked ceramic bird that Mom had carried home from a yard sale one summer and set on the windowsill because she said it made her feel like something was keeping watch. I thought about the fact that nobody else knew it existed. Nobody else would have thought to save it. Nobody else would even know to miss it. And I thought, if there is one single thing I can still do, I will go get it before it disappears. And the moment I thought that, something else arrived right behind it. Calm, clear, certain, the kind of certain that doesn't need to shout. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I work in a county tax and deed office. I process property transfers every single day. I know what a valid notarization looks like. I know what the chain of title is supposed to look like. I know which documents have to match and which signatures have to be witnessed and what happens when they don't. I knew before I ever called a lawyer that what Derek had done was a crime, not a civil dispute. A crime, deed fraud, forgery, theft by deception. I did not tell anyone what I was thinking. I went to work. I came home. I was very polite to Derek when he texted to ask if I was doing okay. I said I was fine, just busy with work. He said that was great. He said we should get together soon. I said yes, sounds good. And I started building the case. The first thing I did was pull every call record I had. My phone logged the app. I had 43 recorded calls with Derek going back 11 months. 43. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and I went through everyone. I wrote down times, dates, what was said. In one call from 8 months ago, he mentioned the house and described a buyer he was just talking to. He said this casually, the way you mention the weather. I wrote it down. In another call from 6 months ago, he said the repairs were more than he thought and that he was going to simplify things. I wrote it down. In the call about the lockbox, he said he didn't want to stress me out with the details. I wrote that down word for word. Then I hired a real estate attorney. I found her through a colleague at work who said she was the best in the county at deed fraud cases. Her name was Paula, and the first thing she said when I sat down in her office and laid out the documents I'd brought was, "This is not gray area. This is black and white criminal fraud." She said it without blinking. Paula filed an emergency motion to challenge the deed transfer. Because I worked in property records, I knew exactly how to pull the original notarization filing, and I knew which county office to contact to flag the transaction as disputed. The process moved faster than it would have for someone who didn't know the system from the inside. That was the part Derek had not planned for. He had forged the signature of the one person in the family who processed deed transfers for a living. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was that he called me 2 weeks into Paula's filing to ask if I'd heard anything unusual about the house recently. He said he'd gotten a letter from the county. He said it was probably just routine. He asked if I had any idea what it might be about. I said I didn't know anything about it. I said it calmly. I was actually walking from my car to my apartment building when he called, and I sat down on the front steps and had the most normal-sounding conversation of my life, while my heart was beating in a way I could feel in my back teeth. He said, "Okay, I'm sure it's nothing." I said, "I'm sure you're right." That call was recorded. The moment the plan almost came apart was during the 3rd week of the legal process, when the investment company that had bought the house submitted their own response to the county dispute. They had a lawyer. They claimed they had purchased in good faith and had documentation to prove it. Their lawyer was aggressive. Paula called me and said we needed to show more than just the recording of Derek mentioning a buyer. We needed to prove I never signed. I was at work when she called. I stepped into the break room and stood by the window and felt the plan shaking under me. I needed something more, and I had 4 hours to figure out what. I sat very still, and then I remembered something. 2 years earlier, for a different reason entirely, I had given a handwriting sample to a bank when I changed accounts. It was a formal document. It was notarized. It was on file. My actual signature, properly witnessed, on a date that was more than a year before Derek's forged transfer. I called the bank. I explained I needed a certified copy of that document for a legal matter. They said 3 business days. I called Paula and told her. She said, "Get it." I got it. A handwriting expert compared the signature on the forged deed to the bank document. The differences were clear. The spacing in my last name was wrong. The way I looped the letter E was different. The pressure pattern on the downstroke was not mine. The expert put it in a written report with side-by-side images. And then we showed it to the county. The case moved to a criminal referral within 30 days. Derek was contacted by authorities. I was not in the room when that happened. I did not see his face in real time. But Paula called me afterward and told me what happened, how the conversation went, the moment when Derek realized the recordings existed and what was on them and who had made them. She said he went completely silent. Just like the house. The investment company settled quickly once the forgery was proven. The deed transfer was voided. A negotiated agreement returned a portion of the funds while the criminal process ran separately. It was not every dollar, but it was most of it. The day the settlement was finalized, Paula called me at work. I walked back to my desk and sat down and opened my email and saw the confirmation. I looked at it for a long moment. I did not feel what I thought I would feel. I thought I would feel triumph. I thought I would feel the rush of winning. What I felt instead was something quieter. Something like the morning after a very long storm when the air is still and damp and the light comes through differently and you realize the hard part is actually over. I went home and I made dinner. Just soup from a can and toast. I sat at my kitchen table and ate it. And on the windowsill above my sink, in the spot where the water stain used to bother me, was the cracked ceramic rooster. I had driven to the house before it was fully cleared by the new owners, who were cooperative once the legal situation was explained. I knocked on the door. I told them about the rooster. The woman who answered said she hadn't touched the kitchen windowsill yet. She let me in. I walked through the house that used to be my mother's house, and I found it right where it had always been, looking a little dusty, the crack in its side exactly as I remembered. I picked it up. I carried it out. I thanked the woman at the door, and I drove home. In the weeks after the case closed, things changed in ways that were quiet and easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Derek did not call. The calls that used to come every week or two just stopped. At first, I noticed the silence the way you notice a sound that's suddenly gone. There was a gap in the week where his name used to appear on my phone screen, and now it just wasn't there. My sisters knew some of what had happened. They had been told enough to understand. They did not ask me a lot of questions. They were not unkind, but they were careful. The way people get when something real has happened inside a family, and no one is sure yet how to move around it. The family group chat, which had been active with memes and birthday wishes and photos of people's kids, went quiet after the news spread. A week went by with nothing. Then my younger sister posted a photo of her dog, and someone replied with a heart, and slowly the chat came back, but it was different. Lighter somehow. Like everyone had agreed without saying it to keep things on the surface for a while. Derek's girlfriend at the time, who I had always liked and who had texted me kind things when Mom passed, sent me one message. It just said, "I'm sorry you had to go through that." I thanked her. I never heard from her again after that. I don't know what happened between her and Derek. I didn't ask. The chair at family dinners, the one Derek always took because it had the best view of the television, was empty at the next gathering. My aunt asked where he was. My sister said he was dealing with some things. My aunt nodded and didn't ask again. That was the moment I knew the family had quietly arrived at a new understanding, not a judgment, not a verdict out loud, just a collective, silent, adjusted reality. I drove past the old house once, about a month after everything settled. The new owners had already put window boxes out front with small yellow flowers in them. The yard was trimmed. Someone had painted the front door a deep green. It looked like a completely different place. I sat in my car across the street and looked at it for maybe 2 minutes. It did not look like Mom's house anymore. It looked like someone else's home, which I supposed it now was. I felt something when I looked at it. Not grief exactly. Something a little past grief. Like the end of a chapter that had been stuck on the same page for too long and you finally turned it. I drove home. I have thought a lot about who I was before all of this and who I am now. I don't think the difference is as dramatic as a story like this might suggest. I did not become a different person. I did not suddenly get louder or bolder or more willing to fight. I actually got quieter. But the quiet is different now. It is a quiet I chose instead of a quiet that was chosen for me. My daily life looks similar from the outside. I still wake up early. I still make coffee. I still drive to work and process deeds and transfers all day. I had lunch last week with a colleague and we talked for 45 minutes about her renovation plans and a show we were both watching, and I laughed at something she said about her cat. And it was the most ordinary lunch I have had in a long time, and it felt like the best thing that had happened to me in months. There is one moment in my current life that would not have existed before. Every morning when I fill the kettle, I look over at the windowsill. The ceramic rooster is there, dusty sometimes, cracked down one side, tilted slightly to the left because the windowsill has a small dip in it. I straighten it sometimes and it tilts back by evening. Some mornings I just look at it for a second and I think about Mom putting it there and deciding it made her feel like someone was keeping watch. I lost the last place that smelled like her. That is real. That loss did not go away because I won a legal case. It sits in a specific part of my chest that I don't visit every day, but that I know is there. What I gained was something I did not expect and did not go looking for. I gained the ability to sit in a room alone, with no noise, no task, no one needing anything from me, and feel completely fine. More than fine. Still, for most of my life, the quiet made me anxious. I filled it with doing, with fixing, with making sure everyone else was okay. I did not know how to just be inside a moment without managing it. I know now. I learned it in the months when I was building a case in silence and could not tell a single person what I was doing. I learned it by becoming very, very still on purpose. I now know that being the one who always shows up does not require you to be the one who always absorbs the cost. I know that noticing something is wrong and saying nothing is not the same as being kind. I know that patience and passivity are not the same thing, and I spent a lot of years confusing them. And I know that the person who forgets you will always underestimate you. That is the one they should have thought about more carefully. What you felt just now, that slow, tight feeling in your chest followed by something that finally released, that is what it feels like to watch someone refuse to disappear quietly. This channel exists for the moments that feeling lives in. If no one in your life has said it yet, you are allowed to be the person who stops absorbing and starts building. Every person who subscribes here is someone who has felt erased by someone who should have shown up. You probably have your own version of this story. It may not be a house or a forged name, but it is real and it matters, and the fact that you are still here and still paying attention says everything about who you are. You are not alone in it.